This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic. This is part 3 of degree measures of angles, and in this video we're going to go over coterminal angles. So two angles are coterminal if their terminal sides coincide when they are in standard position. Every angle is coterminal with infinitely many other angles. Right, so let's do some examples of coterminal angles. 270 degrees and negative 90 degrees. I chose these because in the previous video we drew both of these angles. And so let's see. To do 270, basically if I start here, I end up here. So this is the coterminal side right here. And remember, it's a quadrantal angle, so that's 270 degrees I just drew. And now, let's do negative 90 degrees. I go down, and notice they both end at the same spot here. So if I want to draw their coterminal side, it's exactly the same side. Right here. All right, let's do a different one. How about, let's see, how about 30 degrees? And let's see if you could figure out how to get another one. So let's take 30 degrees. About so there's 30 degrees. So how could I get another coterminal angle? One way is to start here and go in the opposite direction. Okay, so what would that be? Well, I'm going all the way around, but not quite negative 360. If I went negative 360, it's a full revolution. I'm stopping right here. This is 30, right? So it's 30 degrees shy of going clockwise 360. So that's going to be a negative, right? We're going in a negative direction. 330 degrees, right? If I went 30 more degrees, I'd be back here. So negative 330 degrees is coterminal with 30 degrees. And here's another one. How about, right, so remember we want to end up there where the 30 degrees is. So let's say that's 30 degrees. How about if I start here and I go all the way around 360 and then I go 30 degrees more than that? How far have I gone? I've gone 360 plus an extra 30. What's that? 360 plus 30. But I've gone in the positive direction. I've just gone 390 degrees. So 390 degrees is also coterminal. Basically, coterminal angles are they're multiples of 360 degrees from each other. So to get another one, I could go around twice and then up 30. I can go 3 times and go up 30, 4 times and go up 30. And so if you look at between these two right here, they're 360 degrees apart from each other. You could either add 360 to 1, in other words, you could add 360 to 90, right? And that would get you to 270. So you can see it must be 360 degrees apart. Or I could have taken 270 degrees and subtract 360 to get negative 90. But then you could do it again. You could subtract 360 again from that answer. I could take negative 90, subtract 360, and I would get another angle that is coterminal with 270 degrees. So you could go on forever and ever. So here's the algebraic way of expressing what we're doing right here. So here's how I like to think of it. Measures of coterminal angles differ by a multiple of 360 degrees. All right, so they differ by a multiple of 360 degree. Here's like a formal algebraic way of writing this. So if you have an m parentheses a, that's like a measure of angle A. So that might be 75 degrees or something. So A and B are coterminal if and only if there is an integer k, because we're talking about multiples and we're talking about integer multiples, such that the measure of angle A equals the measure of angle B plus 360 degrees k. Okay, so it's quite a mouthful. So let's dissect what that's really talking about, given one of the problems we just did. Let's look back. We wrote that 30 degrees and negative 330 degrees and 390 degrees were all coterminal. So let's see how that fits into that formal definition. So we know that negative 330 degrees and 390 degrees are coterminal, but let's see how that works if I were to think of this formal way of thinking about it. Well, or actually, here's the not formal way to think about it. Can I get, add, so I start with a smaller one, can I add multiples of 360 until I get 390? So in other words, okay, if I add 360 to that gets me to 30 degrees, and then if I add 360 again, I get to 390. So there's a reason why I know they're coterminal, because it's a multiple, right? Their difference is a multiple of 360. All right, but how do you fit it into this formal definition? We want to find if these are coterminal. So we would put in, for one measure, negative 330 degrees. So we're going to use this equation. The measure of one angle is negative 330 degrees. Is that equal to 390 degrees plus some integer times 360 degrees? Okay. And it doesn't matter which one I put here. I could put 390 here and negative 330 here. And in fact, I think arithmetically that might make it easier. So I'm just going to switch it here. Let's just make this 390 and that negative 330. It just means you've got two different measures. It's not like there's a first and a second one. Okay, so if I were going to solve this equation, I would just add 330 degrees to both sides. And that gives me 720 degrees equals 360 degrees K. And then do you see where this is going? When I divide by 360 degrees to both sides, the degree sign cancels, and I get K equals 2. So I found an integer. So the answer is yes. I found an integer, which is exactly the way I, sort of did it, right? I added 360, I added 360 again, and I got that other number. So that's all it means for two angles to be coterminal. This is just a more formal algebraic way of doing it. Now, if I would have solved this and got k equals 1/2 or something else, then I'd be in trouble here, because it only works if you've got an integer k, if you want to try putting it in some sort of equation. So here's a question. Are 50 degrees and 400 degrees coterminal? Well, I would look at 400 and I'll subtract 360 to see if I get down to that number. That gives me to 40. You know what? I'm already past, below 50. So it's not going to work. So I see it's not going to work automatically. Because if I, subtract 360 again, I'm never going to get to 50. If you want to do it the other way, you would put it in that formula. 400 degrees, is that the same thing as 50 plus 360 degrees k, where k has got to be an integer. So I would subtract 50, and that gives me 350 degrees is equal to 360 degrees k. And when I divide by 360 degrees, that's not going to be an integer, right? It's going to be like this fraction, 3536 equals k. So there is not an integer that made that work. So no matter how you look at this is going to be a big fat no. All right, what about this? Are negative 318 degrees and 762 degrees coterminal? Well, you know the way I do it is I just add 360 a bunch of times and see if I can get to that number, or I take the higher number and subtract 360 a bunch of times to see if I can get the other number. So I might do this with my calculator at hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 318 degrees and I'm going to add, 360, and I think that's going to be, what, 42 degrees? 42 degrees. And now you could add 360 or a multiple of 360, because I'm trying to get all the way to 762. So you could add 360 and then add 360 again, or I know that I'm just going to add 720, going to go a little faster. That's a multiple of 360. That's like adding it twice, and I get all the way up to 72 degrees. So I see the answer is yes. So that's my way. The other way is go ahead and say, well, you're going to put the two numbers as one equal to the other one by plus some multiple. So is the other algebraic way of doing it. Doesn't matter which one you put. I like to put the bigger number on the left, but you don't have to. So is that equal to negative? Is 762 degrees equal to negative 318 degrees plus some multiple of 360? So I'm just going to add 318 to both sides. And that gives me 1080. 360, and then I've got to divide both sides by 360. And see if 1080 divided by 360 is an integer, and yeah, it's 3. So that's another reason, if you come up with an integer, that you're going to get an answer of yes. All right, this is an easier problem. Find two angles coterminal with 80 degrees. Okay, well, you could just add 360 to it and you're going to get 1. So that's one way of doing it. Just add 360. And that's going to give you one coterminal, one right there. So that's 440 degrees. Okay, so there's one answer. 440 degrees is coterminal. And then I could go ahead and add 360 to that, or I could add 720, or I could add 3600, any multiple of 360. How about if I add 720? That's a multiple to that answer. And I'll get another coterminal angle. And so you can go all day, right? Add 360 to that again. I could have taken 80 and subtracted 360. It's actually harder to do it going down. How about if I just go subtract 360? So I'm going to get some negative number, and that'll give me an angle that's coterminal as well. So that would be negative 280. And so you could see that when somebody says find two angles that are coterminal, well, there's infinitely many. So there's infinitely many responses. So if I asked a class of 30 students to do this, I can easily get, well, I could get 60 different answers. All right, so that's all there is to coterminal angles. This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic.